Chapter 2. The Father That Could Not Be Still. Detective Jocelyn Keller stared through the one-way glass and into interview room 2. She sipped her coffee while the man waiting in the room played with his white collar, white glasses, and the graying stubble on his chin. He was upset, that much was obvious. The question was whether or not it was a guilty anxiety or a terrified parental one. "I can take his report for you," said the figure standing alongside Jocelyn. "Nobody will think less of you for it." This meant a lot from the only black woman at the 95th Police Precinct. When Elizabeth Collins had transferred from another department to the 95th in late 2019, she'd been forced to repeat some of her training. Elizabeth had been fortunate enough to skip a return to the academy, as well as the standard 24 months as a rookie in training. Now, at Jocelyn's urging, Elizabeth had just earned her detective shield. They drank an entire night away celebrating that one. "Thanks, Iz." Jocelyn smiled sideways at her partner. "But it's been 2 years. I can't keep avoiding kids' cases forever." She didn't mention that yes, the other officers would think less of her if she turned down this case. The standing she had with them now was hard-fought. She wouldn't risk losing the ground she'd gained just because this involved a missing 13-year-old. "Want me to sit in on it?" Elizabeth offered kindly, a person who didn't offer anything to anyone, but especially never when it involved men. "Might help." The offer was no small thing. On the surface, Jocelyn Keller and Elizabeth Collins had very little in common. Race, social class, their wardrobes, none of it had any overlap. It even extended to looks. Jocelyn had her blonde hair, white skin with freckles that covered her face and arms, and wore more makeup than was probably appropriate for a detective with the NYPD. Elizabeth, on the other hand, kept her hair in 3 princess braids at all times, had the tattoo of a hurricane climbing up one arm, and had such clear bronze black skin and sharp eyes that she never had to so much as wear lipstick. Their first 2 weeks as partners, the rest of the 95th had called them Freckles and Hurricane. Even based on this, the idea of these two getting along should have been dumbfounding. None of it made a difference. Ever since the two women met in a grief support group, they'd seen something in each other. Sure, Jocelyn had lost a son, and Elizabeth had lost a dog, but still, there was something about loss that spoke to loss. It had been enough to make best friends out of each other, then co-workers, and finally partners. They were each other's only family now. "Stop mother henning." Jocelyn laughed, but bumped elbows with the woman on her way out of the room. "It's just a missing persons report. I'll be done by the time Emmett gets here in 20 minutes. "That's today." Joy. Elizabeth sighed, staying where she was in front of the translucent wall, her blue jeans and black t-shirt somehow still managing to look imposing. "Oh gosh, if I'd known that was today, I would have put up streamers and bought champagne. I might have even handed out kazoos." "I'd ask if you could get any more sarcastic, but then you'd probably shatter all the windows," remarked Jocelyn from the doorway. "That's when somebody screams, and don't tempt me. Screaming is probably the most boring, non-violent thing I want to do each time I see your ex-husband." Deciding not to reward that with a response, Jocelyn crossed to the station's tiny kitchen. She refilled her coffee, poured a second one, and headed for the interview room. "Hello, Mino Iona," she greeted the man at the table. "I'm Detective Jocelyn Keller. I understand you're here to file a missing persons report." "Yes." The man finally stopped his fidgeting as the paper cup was placed in front of him. Jocelyn was careful not to touch his hand in the exchange. As with the COVID virus going around, she couldn't be too careful. "My daughter, Leanne Lee. She's been missing since yesterday morning." The man sipped his coffee and then made the face everybody at the 95th made when they drank it. They kicked it back anyway, of course. Their survival depended on that stuff. "Yesterday was a Saturday. What does your daughter normally do on the weekends?" Jocelyn opened a notepad. Some of the other detectives preferred to use the department's iPads to take notes, but she swung towards the old school. "She has a bike riding group she spends her Saturdays with. Miles, not muffins, it's called. It's got something like 20 kids in it. It's organized through her school, Horace Mann. I saw her for breakfast before she went, but she never came home. She's usually back by 3 in the afternoon, 4 at the latest. He shifted his cup from his right hand to his left, most likely because his right was shaking too badly. It made Jocelyn think too much of Emmett, although with him it was always a toss-up whether the shaking was the result of his medications or his stress, both of which he lived with plenty of. "What time did Leilani leave?" Jocelyn asked. 8:15. I know because I was getting ready for work. Working on a Saturday? What do you do? She'd recognized his green cargo pants and orange t-shirt as an obvious uniform, but the name of his organization was hidden by his green fleece jacket. The way he told her the facts, straight and with minimal fumbling, told her he knew how to file a report as much as she did. I work with Wilderness Search and Rescue, so I don't have set work hours. I go where I'm called, when I'm called. Yesterday morning we were dispatched to Overlook Mountain to go after a hiker that fell down a ravine. It was a quick call and I was back by 2. You told Higa at the front desk that your daughter is 13. Do you frequently leave your teenager home alone when you go on calls? She's the most responsible teenager you'll ever meet. She runs a neighborhood watch. She's been class president at her school. She doesn't sneak around, skip school, or... Here the shaking transferred to both hands, and he had to put his coffee down. I don't know how this works, he said. I mean, I know how this works in the mountains. I know what to do when somebody falls down a ravine or gets swept away by a river. I know how to handle that, but this? I don't know what to do with this. It's always different when it's your own kid, Jocelyn said, and hoped there was kindness in her eyes instead of pain. The man might have managed to relay the facts to her well enough, but his anxiety almost had him vibrating. But the one thing that's always true in these situations is that you shouldn't face them alone. Do you have a wife we can call for you, Mr. Iona? Maybe a friend? My wife walked out on us when Leilani was just a few years old. She said that my job as part of WSAR was too hard on her, that she couldn't sleep at night when I was out on a call. She made me choose. The man shuddered, likely recalling that last argument. Can you imagine having to choose between your family and your family, Detective Keller? Jocelyn smiled sadly. Yes, she did know that choice. I do know that worrying about a kid is a crazy kind of worry. It's the kind that can consume everything around it, even your own common sense. That said, I imagine you've already done some of your own research into this. When 4 p.m. rolled around and Leilani wasn't back, I started making calls. Since my daughter wasn't replying to anything I sent her, I made sure her bike was still gone, and then I called the parents of the other kids in the bike group. They said that Leilani never even showed up. That's good. Jocelyn gave him a gentle, congratulating smile. As part of WSAR, you know how important a timeline can be. We know that Leilani left your house at 8:15 a.m., but she never joined the other cyclists. Do you know the route she would have taken to join them? It isn't a long trip. Seton Park, where she meets the other kids, is just 3 blocks from our house. Great. This means we know approximately what time she went missing, which is between 8:15 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. We also know approximately where something had to have happened, and better yet, it's only a 3-block radius. Can you think of anywhere Leilani would have stopped along her route? Do any of her friends live in those 3 blocks? Maybe there's somewhere she used to visit with her mom. No. Mr. Iona shook his head. Those 3 blocks are just residential, and she doesn't know anybody in them. She wouldn't have stopped, and if she was going to, she would have phoned ahead to let the group know to wait for her. One more thing, Jocelyn said as she got up. Can you provide us with a current photo of Leilani? Of course. Mino Iona got to his feet too, seeming steadier now that he'd done something. But what else can I do? I can't just go home and wait. What would you tell the family of someone missing in the mountains? She asked him. He gave what seemed a ragged sigh, as if berating himself for not having asked himself that very same question. Stay by the phone in case you need to ask me for more information, and stay calm. Panicking just makes it harder to be helpful. He said it like it was a script he'd long memorized. I hate that this happened today. Today? The virus. It's all over the news. I know they've said it's only dangerous for older folks and people still with underlying conditions, but still. Yeah, but kids can still bring it back to their parents, grandparents, and friends. Once Leilani finds that out, she might just walk right back into your house. You need to be at your house in case that happens. She escorted the father out of the room, across the main floor full of desks, and back into the lobby. Now you give the current photo to Higa here. He'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. Here's my card. You call me if you think of anything that feels important, and I'll call you the minute I have something, okay? I just don't understand what could have happened except something unthinkable. It's 3 blocks, Detective Keller. It's just 3 blocks that my daughter knows by heart. Where could she be right now except somewhere horrible, taken by somebody terrible? There's nothing I can tell you right now that'll be comforting, she admitted, finding it impossible not to remember tucking a little boy into bed at night, telling him home meant safe in a world that made liars of presidents as much as it did parents. All I can tell you is that this case is important to me, and I'm going to do everything I can to find her. Thank you. He nodded at her and turned to talk to Koki Higa. So, do you think this is another one of those cases of the husband does it, lies about it, thinks he got away with it, but then Freckles and Hurricane sweep in to find the truth? Elizabeth spoke up once Jocelyn returned to her desk. As usual, she had to kick Elizabeth's legs off of her chair before she could sit down. It was like her friend's feet were allergic to the floor. I obviously can't know for sure yet, but my gut feeling, he's telling the truth. He works for WSAR, and that's not a job you take on unless you care about people. It could be the mom, but she's been missing in action for a while. Why take the girl now? Besides, Leilani went missing from a really small area during a really small amount of time. If her dad did kidnap his own kid, he's making it crazy easy to figure it out. Did it feel good? Elizabeth asked, and when Jocelyn glanced at her confused, she lowered her voice to something akin to a whisper. When I lost my dog, I told myself I'd never get another one. I told myself that I'd loved and lost, and that should be enough for one person's life. But then I got Princess. I started playing in the backyard with her, and you know what? I found myself again. Found sanity again. Elizabeth shook her head, raised her voice back to something close to normal. Anyway, what I meant to ask was, did it feel good to take on a real case? Get away from those foot patrols? Jocelyn stared down into her cup, still embarrassed at how long it had taken her to get back on her feet after losing Brooklyn. She'd taken a leave of absence right when it happened, which had been right after she got her detective shield. She'd then had to extend it when she found out how long Emmett's recovery would take. By the time she'd gotten around to returning to the 95th, she'd been put back on foot patrol again, and her dream of becoming a detective had seemed a long way off. Fortunately, her friendship with Elizabeth had inspired her to push forward, and as of 2020, she had her own caseload again. It feels normal, Jocelyn finally answered, which is what feels so terrible about it. I keep asking myself stupid questions. She lowered her own voice when she added, like, is it too early for me to feel normal again? Does that make me a horrible She cut herself off, the word mom tasting almost as bitter as the despicable coffee they all guzzled. Hey. Elizabeth reached over to lightly slap Jocelyn's shoulder. Remember the motto of Mournin' Mourners? Nobody gets to tell you how to mourn, not even you. Jocelyn quoted the leader of the grief support group she and Elizabeth had met in. Still true. Elizabeth grinned. Just tell me how many more times I need to hit you over the head with that. I'm always willing. Aw, Jocelyn mocked just as her cell phone went off. Keller, she answered. Your husband just pulled into the parking lot, reported Koki Higa, his words rapid fire as usual. He's driving a minivan. Why is he driving a minivan? Isn't there only one of him and minivans are for families? Oh, sorry, Keller. The apology for being insensitive was barely out before the Japanese man kept right on going. Wow, That's got to be the Frankenstein of cars. Just how many different junkyards did he go to patch that thing together? I'm sure that's not one of the things you fought for in the divorce. Oh, sorry, Keller. Thanks, Higa, Jocelyn said before the man could get any further in his always offensive, always highly caffeinated ranting. Emmett's here, she added to her partner after ending the call. Oh, goody, Elizabeth drawled, sounding like the total opposite of excited. My most favorite person is here. Now I wish I'd gotten the kazoos.